Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on another public sector vote in favor of strike action. But first, budget impact in Alberta.
We need a program that reflects the reality that we are growing rapidly.
This budget's going to be judged based on results and actions and not just words on paper.
Perspective there from Alberta's two new big city mayors on a federal budget, big on capital spending, and with a focus on pro-business measures that aim to increase productivity. It also paves the way to ending the government's contentious emissions cap. Joining us now to pick up on the business discussion, Adam Legge, President of the Business Council of Alberta. Mr. Legge, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for having me.
All right. How about a very straightforward question to get us started? How does Alberta fare in this budget?
Well, I think far better than we have in the past decade, to be honest, Michael. This is a budget that, while it's not everything we hoped for, is a market improvement. It talks about the economy. It talks about productivity. It really speaks to some of the potential for Canada to be a conventional and clean energy superpower. It talks about trade. It talks about trade infrastructure. And there are some pieces in there that are positive for Alberta, still a little uncertain, as you mentioned, about the emissions cap and some of the greenwashing provisions. So it's definitely an improvement over the past decade, but we still think that it didn't quite hit the mark of what it could have been.
Okay, so last night on Alberta Primetime, we used a clip of the finance minister where he declares this budget will spur $1 trillion in investment through to the next decade. How does, or where does that land with the business sector in our province?
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind is that the minister is actually adding both private and public sector investment into that figure. And so our concern is that it's quite heavy on public spend. And what we would rather see is the government create an environment to unlock private capital. And what I'm hearing from my members in the private sector is that this didn't quite go far enough to bring capital off the sidelines and put it to work in Canada, simply because they didn't tackle a couple of the critical pieces, whether that is around really doing even better on the regulatory environment, tackling the clean electricity regulations so that we can do everything from increasing the data center opportunities across Canada. It didn't tackle the tanker ban, which would have enabled some of the pipeline activity off the West Coast. It didn't commit to the tax review that they had long talked about, which will improve the ability for both companies and individuals to be attracted and retained here in Canada. So the general sentiment is that it went part way, but it didn't do enough to fully create the conditions to get private capital to work here in Canada.
Okay, does it move the needle at all in terms of making Canada a more competitive environment to invest in? There are tax incentives that are built into this budget.
They've got what they're calling the productivity super deduction, which frankly is a reintroduction of the 100% deduction of capital cost investment in machinery, equipment, and facilities. So it's not really new, but it's a continuation of a proper program. They've done some analysis and suggest that when you put that against the U.S., that the tax rate for corporate Canada is lower compared to the U.S. as a result of this. But that is an assumption that companies will be investing at a certain level in equipment or manufacturing facilities or innovation, et cetera. So the companies that don't necessarily do that may still have a higher tax rate than the United States. So it's really making an assumption is dependent upon what they're doing and what they're investing in. But I would have liked to have seen competitiveness more broadly on a tax basis, on a regulatory approval basis. We're way behind the U.S. on that in terms of our permitting times. I would have liked to have seen that on a personal income tax basis so we can continue to attract those people who may be disenfranchised with what's happening in the States and capture some great tech talent and capture some great engineering talent and skilled trades. people who want to set up businesses and entrepreneurs who would be affected by capital gains taxes. So it's an improvement, but it's not quite where we need to be.
And in moving major projects forward, and potentially that could include a new pipeline to the coast, how confident is the business community here in our province in the state of dialogue, the state of relations between the Smith and Carney governments as they try to move things forward?
There are active discussions. You saw Premier didn't really weigh in on the budget because she's indicated that there is an active discussion going on for a memorandum of understanding between Alberta and the federal government. And so I think she is reserving judgment in terms of what the budget and what the sort of package looks like until that agreement is landed on and if possible, signed. We're optimistic. There's indications on the emissions cap, but I think it was silent or recommitting on some of the other areas like clean electricity regulations. So we'll see what comes out, but I think there's optimism that there could be this sort of grand bargain that is struck that, frankly, if that's the case, would unlock investment that would enable us to get major projects to West Coast, North Coast, south into the U.S., more investment in data centers, more investment in critical minerals. All of that could come as a result of a really strong MOU.
Maybe as a final question, Adam, with the federal budget now out, how well positioned are we for now weathering the trade war with the U.S. and even the prospect of a recession?
Well, there's really strong investment and recognition of the importance of trade infrastructure in this budget, and that's ports and airports and rail. So there's lots of the good stuff that is going to be needed to get our products to other markets that aren't the U.S. And so I'm very happy to see not only a strategic perspective to that, but some dollars invested in that as well. But we've got to move quickly. Because we can't take 3, 4, 5, 6 years to approve and then build a project on a trade infrastructure basis, because those windows of transitioning trade relationships from the U.S. to other countries need to happen faster than that. In terms of weathering a recession, I mean, we've got some really challenged sectors in this country: autos, steel, aluminum, agriculture. All are facing tariffs from either the United States or China or even India now. And so we've got to really focus on what are those areas that we can continue to invest in. We've got a pretty heavy storm to weather. So time will tell whether this budget will actually unlock the private capital that will enable jobs to be created, investment to happen, that we could come out free of a recession or weathering it better than we may have if we hadn't made some of those investments.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate getting your perspective on the budget this evening, Mr. Legge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Michael.
Adam Legge is president of the Business Council of Alberta.